The day my husband left me for another woman, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He stood in our living room wearing the expensive suit I had helped pay for, holding a leather suitcase I had bought him for our 20th anniversary, and told me our marriage was over as casually as if he were discussing the weather. "I didn't plan for this to happen, Emily," he said. That was the first lie, because nothing about what happened next felt unplanned. I stared at him from across the room, trying to understand why the man I'd spent 23 years loving suddenly looked like a stranger. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He sighed impatiently. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Harder? The word hit me like a slap. Our daughter had moved out 2 years earlier. The house was quiet. Life had finally become stable after decades of sacrifice. I'd worked double shifts when his business failed. I'd sold my mother's jewelry to help us pay bills. I'd skipped vacations, postponed dreams, and stood beside him through every disappointment. And now he was talking as if I was creating a problem. Then he delivered the sentence that changed everything. "I met someone." The room went silent. For a few seconds, I couldn't even hear my own breathing. Every marriage has moments when things feel difficult, but there are certain words that instantly divide your life into before and after. Those 3 words were mine. I met someone. I looked at him and searched for some sign of guilt. There was none. Instead, I saw excitement. The kind of excitement people have when they're about to start a new adventure. The realization made my stomach twist. "Who is she?" I asked quietly. His expression softened. "Not for me, for her. Her name is Vanessa." The name sounded familiar. Then I remembered. Everyone in town knew Vanessa Sinclair. She owned luxury properties, drove sports cars, hosted charity galas, appeared in magazine articles. She was wealthy, glamorous, and 15 years younger than me. Suddenly everything made sense. The new clothes, the late-night meetings, the unexplained absences, the growing distance between us. I swallowed hard. "How long?" He hesitated, which told me all I needed to know. "Several months." Months. While I cooked his meals, while I washed his clothes, while I worried about his stress. He had been building a second life. I felt something inside me crack. Not loudly, quietly, like glass breaking underwater. Then came the sentence I would never forget. The sentence that haunted me for years. "You deserve someone who appreciates you." I almost laughed, because that was the cruelest thing he'd said all evening. I deserved appreciation? After 23 years of giving him everything? The irony was unbearable. "Just tell me the truth, Mark." His eyes narrowed. "What truth? Why are you really leaving?" For the first time, the mask slipped, and what came next was pure honesty. Brutal honesty. The kind that cuts deeper than lies. "I'm tired of struggling." I stared at him. He continued. "I'm 52 years old, Emily. I don't want to spend the rest of my life worrying about bills. We aren't struggling anymore. Not compared to before. But look around." He gestured toward our home. The home we'd built together. The home filled with family memories. The home where we'd raised our daughter. The home I'd loved. "I want more." Chest tightened. More. That single word somehow hurt worse than the affair, because it wasn't just our marriage he was rejecting. It was our entire life. Everything we'd built. Everything we'd survived. Everything we'd sacrificed. Then he looked me directly in the eyes. "You were enough. When I thought this was the best life I could have." I felt my heart stop. He paused. "But now, no it isn't." The silence that followed was devastating. I don't remember him leaving. I don't remember hearing the front door close. I only remember standing there alone, staring at the empty space where my husband had been, trying to understand how 23 years could disappear in a single conversation. If you've ever had someone walk away after everything you've done for them, subscribe to Legacy Whisper. Some stories aren't just about heartbreak. They're about discovering your worth after someone else fails to see it. At that moment, though, worth was the last thing on my mind. All I felt was pain. But the weeks that followed were worse than I imagined. News traveled quickly. Friends who used to call every week suddenly became busy. Neighbors lowered their voices when I walked by. People looked at me with pity. I hated pity. Pity makes you feel like a victim before you've even decided whether you are one. My daughter, Sophie, came to visit every weekend. She tried to stay positive, but I could see the anger in her eyes whenever her father's name came up. "He doesn't deserve you," she said one evening. I forced a smile. "He's still your father." She shook her head. "No, he's a man who abandoned his family because someone richer came along." I wanted to defend him. Strangely, part of me still loved him. But I couldn't argue with her, because she was right. The divorce process moved faster than expected, almost suspiciously fast, as if Mark had prepared everything long before he announced his decision. Lawyers exchanged documents, assets were divided, papers were signed. Each signature felt like another funeral. Meanwhile, social media became a nightmare. Photos of Mark and Vanessa appeared everywhere. Luxury resorts, private events, wine tastings, designer clothing, smiling faces, perfect sunsets, perfect happiness. At least that's what they wanted everyone to believe. Every picture felt like a personal attack. Every smile felt staged. Every caption felt designed to prove he'd made the right choice. And for a while, I believed it. For a while, I thought maybe I had lost. Maybe Vanessa had won. Maybe life really did reward people with money, beauty, and connections. Maybe loyalty wasn't worth much anymore. Then something happened that changed everything. It was a rainy Tuesday night. I couldn't sleep. The house felt unbearably empty, so I decided to clean the attic. I needed a distraction, something to keep my mind busy. Hours passed as I sorted through old boxes, family photographs, school projects, Christmas decorations, pieces of a life that suddenly felt distant. Then I found an old photo album that had belonged to my father. My father had passed away 6 years earlier. We'd been very close. Some days, I still reached for my phone, forgetting he was gone. I sat on the attic floor and slowly flipped through the pages. Pictures from family vacations, birthday parties, graduations, moments frozen in time. Then something unexpected happened. An envelope slipped from between two photographs and landed beside me. I frowned. I'd never seen it before. The paper looked old, carefully folded. My pulse quickened when I saw the handwriting, because I recognized it immediately. It was my father's. For a moment, I simply stared at it. My hands began to shake. Why had I never seen this before? Why was it hidden? And why did I suddenly feel like opening it might change my life? Slowly, I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. A very short letter, but every word would soon turn my world upside down. "Emily, if you're reading this, then life has taken an unexpected turn. There are things I've never told you, things I promised to keep secret until the right moment. When that moment comes, contact Robert Jenkins immediately. Trust him, everything will finally make sense. Love always, Dad." I read the letter again, and again, and again. My heart pounded louder each time. Who is Robert Jenkins? What secret was my father talking about? And why had he waited until after his death to tell me? Outside, thunder echoed through the night. Inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not sadness, not anger, not heartbreak. Curiosity. Because for the first time since Mark left, my story no longer felt finished. It felt like it was just beginning. And I had absolutely no idea that the name written on that piece of paper was about to reveal a secret that had been hidden from me for more than 25 years. The next morning, I woke up thinking the letter had been a dream. For a few seconds, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling that familiar heaviness that had become part of my life since the divorce. Then I remembered the envelope, the attic, my father's handwriting, Robert Jenkins. I sat up immediately. The letter was still on my nightstand. Real. Every word of it. I read it again over breakfast, hoping it would somehow reveal more than it had the night before. It didn't. The message remained as mysterious as ever. By noon, curiosity had completely taken over. I opened my laptop and searched for Robert Jenkins. The result made me freeze. Robert Jenkins wasn't just a lawyer, he was one of the most respected estate attorneys in the state. His firm handled multi-million-dollar trusts, corporate inheritances, and high-profile family assets. I stared at his photograph on the firm's website. Why would my father know someone like that? More importantly, why had he hidden it from me? That question bothered me all day. By evening, I finally called the office. I expected weeks of waiting. Instead, the receptionist sounded surprisingly prepared. "Mr. Jenkins has been expecting your call." My heart skipped. "What? Would Thursday morning work for you, Miss Carter?" Expecting my call? How could anyone expect a call that depended on a letter hidden in an attic for years? Nothing about this made sense. And yet, 2 days later, I found myself sitting inside one of the most impressive office buildings I'd ever entered. The reception area alone looked more expensive than my entire house. A woman escorted me into a large office overlooking the city skyline. Moments later, the door opened. An older man with silver hair walked in. The moment he saw me, he smiled. Not politely, warm like someone greeting an old friend. "Emily Carter." I stood. "Mr. Jenkins." He shook my hand. Then he said something that instantly sent chills through my body. "I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." The room suddenly felt smaller. I sat down slowly. What exactly is going on? Instead of answering immediately, he opened a thick file resting on his desk. The file looked old, very old. Its edges were worn. The papers inside had clearly been handled many times over the years. Finally, he looked up. "Before we begin, there's something you need to know." I held my breath. This conversation should have happened years ago. What conversation? He folded his hands. "Your grandfather's conversation." I blinked. "My grandfather?" He nodded. "Yes. My grandfather, William Carter, had died when I was in my 20s. I remembered him as a quiet man who rarely spoke about business. As far as I knew, he'd lived an ordinary life. Nothing remarkable, nothing mysterious, certainly nothing connected to lawyers like Robert Jenkins. What about him?" The attorney opened the file, then he spoke words that completely changed my understanding of my family. "Your grandfather established a trust." I frowned. "A trust?" "Yes." My pulse quickened. "For who?" "For you." The room went silent. I stared at him, certain I'd heard him wrong. "For me?" He nodded calmly. "Specifically for you." 100 questions exploded inside my mind. Why would he do that? Because he wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? Mr. Jenkins looked at me carefully. Then he answered, "From exactly what happened." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" His voice softened. "Your grandfather loved you very much." I swallowed. "He believed you would spend your life helping others." I immediately thought of Mark. The years of sacrifice. The years of support. The years of putting someone else's dreams before my own. Mr. Jenkins continued. "He worried that one day someone would take advantage of your kindness." My chest tightened, because that was exactly what had happened. "He instructed your father to keep the trust secret." I stared. "Even from me?" "Especially from you." The answer shocked me. "Why?" "Because he believed that if you knew about it, people might love your money instead of loving you." For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Then Mr. Jenkins slid several documents across the desk. "There's more." I glanced down. The papers were filled with legal language and financial statements. Numbers. Lots of numbers. Very large numbers. Numbers? That made absolutely no sense. I looked up. "I don't understand." He gave a small smile. "You will." Then he pointed toward a figure printed near the bottom of the page. My eyes moved downward. When I saw the number, my entire body went cold. I blinked. Once. Twice. 3 times. Surely I was reading it wrong. $32,400,000. I looked up so quickly my neck hurt. "What is this?" Mr. Jenkins remained calm. "The current estimated value of your trust." The world stopped. $32 million. The number sounded impossible, absurd, unreal. I laughed nervously. "There must be a mistake." "There isn't." "No." I pushed the papers away. "No, that's impossible." "It isn't." I felt dizzy. The office blurred. The city skyline outside the window seemed to spin. For months I'd been worrying about bills. For months I'd been wondering whether I'd have enough money to retire. For months I'd been questioning every financial decision I'd ever made. And now, someone was calmly telling me I was worth over $30 million. None of it felt real. How? The word barely escaped my lips. Mr. Jenkins leaned back. Then he told me a family story I never heard before. Decades earlier, my grandfather had purchased large sections of land nobody wanted. At the time, friends called him foolish. Some laughed. Some mocked him. Others claimed he'd wasted his savings. But years later, major developments transformed the area. The value exploded. Then, investments multiplied the profits. Additional properties followed. Business partnerships. Long-term holdings. Everything was carefully managed. Year after year. Decade after decade. Until the trust became something extraordinary. I sat there speechless. The entire time, my family had been carrying a secret larger than anything I could have imagined, and I never knew. Then Mr. Jenkins said something unexpected. Actually, the money isn't the most important thing. I frowned. How could $32 million not be the most important thing? He opened another envelope. This is the moment I saw my father's handwriting again. Tears instantly filled my eyes. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. The words blurred through my tears, but I forced myself to read. Emily, if you're reading this, then life has probably hurt you. And if life has hurt you, there's something you need to remember. Your value was never determined by who chose you, or who left you, or who failed to see your worth. The people who truly love you never make you prove your value. If someone walks away, let them. Never chase people who abandon you. Spend your energy becoming the person you were always meant to be. And one more thing, don't allow money to change your heart, because kindness is the real inheritance our family hopes to leave behind. I love you, Dad. By the time I reached the end, tears were streaming down my face, not because of the money, because somehow my father had reached across time and spoken directly to the pain I was carrying. It felt like he knew we had somehow anticipated this exact moment years earlier. Mr. Jenkins quietly handed me a tissue. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Finally, I looked up. What happens now? He smiled. That depends on you. Over the next several weeks, I met with financial advisors, accountants, and legal experts. The entire process felt overwhelming. Every meeting revealed another layer of the trust. Additional investments, properties, business interests, resources I never knew existed. Yet something surprising happened. The more I learned about the money, the less interested I became in spending it. Instead, I became interested in rebuilding myself, because somewhere along the way, I'd lost who I was. For years, my identity had revolved around being a wife, supporting Mark, helping Mark, believing in Mark. Now that role was gone, and for the first time in decades, I had an opportunity to decide who Emily Carter actually wanted to be. So I made a decision. I wouldn't tell anyone, not yet, not even Sophie. Needed time, time to heal, time to think, time to become stronger before the world started treating me differently. And that decision turned out to be one of the smartest choices I'd ever made. Because while I was quietly rebuilding my life, something very different was happening inside Mark's supposedly perfect new world. A world that was about to reveal cracks nobody could see. And the first sign arrived on a Sunday afternoon, when Sophie walked into my kitchen with a strange look on her face and said, "Mom, I just heard something about Dad and Vanessa that doesn't make any sense." The moment she said those words, I knew the story wasn't over. In fact, it felt like an entirely new chapter was about to begin. The moment Sophie said those words, I put down my coffee. She wasn't the type to spread gossip. If something had caught her attention, there was usually a reason. "What did you hear?" I asked. She slid into the chair across from me. For a second, she looked unsure whether she should even tell me. Then she sighed. "Apparently Dad and Vanessa have been fighting." I raised an eyebrow. People fight. Not like this. Something in her tone made me pay attention. Sophie leaned forward. A friend of mine works at the country club where they spend most weekends. I stayed quiet. She said they'd been arguing constantly for months. I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Part of me didn't care, or at least I wanted to believe I didn't, but another part of me couldn't ignore the curiosity. After all, Mark had walked away from our marriage convinced he'd found a better life. Now, less than 2 years later, cracks were already appearing. What are they fighting about? I asked. Sophie hesitated. Money. The answer surprised me. Vanessa was wealthy. At least that's what everyone believed. So why would money be a problem? Sophie shrugged. I don't know the details. Neither did I, but over the next few months, rumors became impossible to ignore. At first, they were small whispers, comments, half-finished conversations. Then the stories became more specific. Vanessa was controlling. Mark was frustrated. Major investments weren't performing well. Properties were tied up in debt. Business partnerships were collapsing. The glamorous life they advertised online wasn't matching reality. And the more I heard, the more I realized something important. People often fall in love with appearances, not reality. Mark had fallen in love with a fantasy, and fantasies have a way of collapsing when real life arrives. Meanwhile, my own life was changing in ways I never expected. With guidance from financial advisors, I began investing carefully, not recklessly, not extravagantly, intentionally. I purchased a small manufacturing company that had been struggling. 18 months after finding my father's letter, I attended a charity gala hosted by one of the organizations I supported. The ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and soft music. As I spoke with investors and business leaders, I felt something strange. Someone was watching me. I turned around, and there he was, Mark, the man who had shattered my life. For a moment, neither of us spoke, but something had changed. The confident man who once left me for a richer woman looked exhausted and defeated. Emily, he said quietly. Mark, I replied. His eyes moved around the room as people greeted me, asked for my opinion, and thanked me for my work. Finally, he asked, what happened to you? I smiled softly. I found myself. Just then, one of my business partners approached. Emily, the board is waiting for you. We need our smartest partner back at the table. Partner? The word hit Mark like a thunderbolt. After my colleague walked away, Mark stared at me. You're a business partner? Yes. His face filled with disbelief. Then he asked a question that revealed everything. Emily, are you successful now? Not happy. Not healed. Not fulfilled. Successful in now. He measured life through money and status. Then, after a long silence, he whispered the words I once dreamed of hearing. I made a mistake. Years earlier, those words would have meant everything. Now, they meant almost nothing, because they couldn't erase betrayal. They couldn't rebuild trust. They couldn't change the past. A few months later, the truth about Vanessa's financial empire began to collapse. Projects failed. Investors pulled out. Lawsuits appeared. The glamorous fortune Mark had sacrificed everything to chase was built on a fragile foundation. Then came the final shock. Vanessa left him. The woman he had chosen over his family walked away without looking back. The irony was impossible to ignore. One evening, my phone rang. It was Mark. His voice sounded broken. I owe you an apology, he said. I hurt you. I hurt Sophie. I destroyed our family. For the first time, I heard genuine humility. No excuses, no blame, just truth. I thought money would make me happy, he admitted. Instead, I threw away the best part of my life. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Can you ever forgive me? I closed my eyes and thought carefully. Finally, I answered. I forgave you a long time ago. Silence. Then I added. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. He understood. And that was enough. After the call ended, I realized something important. The greatest revenge isn't making someone regret losing you. The greatest revenge is building a life so meaningful that their regret becomes irrelevant. The years that followed became some of the happiest of my life. The businesses grew, scholarships were created in my father's name, families received help, and my daughter Sophie built a successful company of her own. One evening, while watching the sunset together, Sophie asked me a question. Mom, if you could go back and stop Dad from leaving, would you? I looked toward the horizon, and for the first time knew the answer. No, she looked surprised. Why? I smiled through tears. Because if he hadn't left, I might never have discovered who I really was. That's when I finally understood. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the doorway to your best future. Sometimes rejection redirects you. Sometimes betrayal reveals your strength. And sometimes the people who walk away aren't taking your happiness with them. They're making room for it. A few months later, I saw Mark one last time by chance. We exchanged a small smile and continued walking in opposite directions. No anger, no bitterness, no unfinished business, just peace. Because this story was never about revenge, it was about self-worth. Never let another person's choices determine your value. People leave, people fail, people make mistakes, but your worth remains, always. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance you ever receive isn't money. It's finally learning your own worth.